Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I am continuing work on my 5 Little Peppers journal today. So I hope you'll join me, and if you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I hope if you like this video, you'll give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and click on the little bell for a notification when I do post something new. I'm going to put a playlist together. I think this is episode number 4 for this journal. If you've been following me for the last few weeks, I have been working on these cute little smaller size journals with my slow stitched spines covers. So I am working on number 3. These have been, I think, in a playlist on vintage book journals, but I'm going to create one just for this one since I am doing it in detail, start to finish, as opposed to the other ones, which I didn't film everything. So we are on the portion where I have cut my signatures down to fit into my journal. And now I want to fine tune them even more, make sure I like how they're organized, maybe add a couple things here and there before I sew them into the book. So that's where I'm at today. Yesterday I spent the day doing some mask making a little bit, and I didn't do anything on camera, but I wanted to share with you what I did because it might give you some ideas. So I'm going to set that aside for just a second. In previous videos in this series, I had mentioned that I had purchased some other papers that I hadn't even played around with yet. So I did that yesterday. So 2 of the new papers that I purchased were some mulberry paper. I had never worked with this before. It's a little thicker and gives you that kind of old document feel. It has that feeling like it has more of linen content in it. It has a smoother side and then a side that's a little more rough. And then I also worked with some tea bag paper. This is kind of in like I'll put links below for these. I purchased these off Amazon. This is 13 inches by 118 inches. So it's one big piece folded over and over like tissue paper. But it is tea bag paper. It is very sturdy. I loved working with it. It even had an extra little bonus thing about it that I had not expected that I'll share with you. It has a very slick side and then a rough side, similar to what rice paper is like, only this is much sturdier than rice paper, and I'll show you what happened in my experiment. So I wanted to tea stain some of this, and I also wanted to tea stain some doily. So I took just some different size doilies and a big rectangular one, and tea stained these as well to fold and put into my journal. So there's a bunch of different sizes that I have to play with of these. And I wanted to show, I didn't iron a couple of them. There's different methods to doing tea stain and coffee stained papers. I have done videos on them. There's lots of videos out there. I may do another standalone video here soon, just because I've been, playing with it a little bit more again. But one of the things, if you've never done this before, some people will dry them in the oven. I've done them that way. They get very crispy and super wrinkly. The other thing is you can just air dry them outside, which is kind of what I did. I have a room that's kind of indoor-outdoor room, and I dried them out there. So I had lots of air going through, but they weren't outside where the wind could take them away. So if you have a patio or a covered patio or something like that, that's kind of protected, then you don't have to worry about them as much. But when you do that, even out in the air, they come out wrinkly. And I'm bringing this up because I just had this as a question from someone in one of the comments of these previous videos. I iron these when I'm finished. So I'm going to iron this one real quick and show you how it comes out. Okay, so this one I ironed. You can see it's still kind of wrinkly. Normally what I do is when I iron anything, paper, anything, I do them flat, and while they're still warm, I will even stack them on each other and grab, a bunch of them and put them on the floor under some heavy books. Obviously carpeting, it won't work because you need a hard surface to a hard surface. So if you have your studio's carpeted, then just put a book, put the papers down, and then put more books on top. And that will, while they're warm, that will help flatten them out even more. So that's what I do to keep my wrinkles out, but it is work, to get them all ironed out. And some papers are worse than others. This is some tracing paper. and it gets really wrinkly, you can see, and you don't get all those wrinkles out, but that's kind of part of the charm of that paper. So everyone's different. Some of them take more work than others to get them ironed out, but that's how I get them flat enough to run them through my printer. Obviously, I'm not going to run doilies through my printer. You probably could if you taped all down the edges down. You may be able, but I've never tried that. So I just trimmed for the tea bag what I needed, but I wanted to print on it. So I'll show you. First, I'll show you how the mulberry paper came out. So most of these, the method I used for tea staining these was I took just a glass dish that they would fit in, and I put probably a cup of hot water to 4 tea bags and just let that steep a little bit to get it dark. The other thing that I like to add, I didn't do it in this batch, but to get a nice color is I'll do a mix of tea and coffee, or even just coffee. You can use instant coffee and then it dissolves completely, or you can use old coffee or make a cup of coffee and do that. I just use the instant coffee, any brand, just the cheapest brand, because it dissolves completely. You can make it as dark or light as you want. So it's easier to control. So for these, I just dip them and then let them dry. And you can see if you don't, I didn't get that little spot dipped. You need to get every little bit of it wet because it's only going to change color where the tea is. So here you see I have a little spot that I didn't get very good either. Then on a couple of them, I wanted them to look a little more distressed, even with some stains. So for that, I actually on this one, I actually just with my hand, so that it had really big droplets, I just splashed some tea onto it and let it dry. And then I went back and dipped the whole thing so that it wouldn't be white. So you can do that in one shot. I could have done it the reverse, where I, stained the whole thing and then added some splashes to it to give me some of those water stains. So I've made a bunch of this mulberry paper because I wanted to print some old documents onto this and have them look like, they're not going to look like originals, but they look close. So this is one of the examples. So I had one side that I had just tea stained, and then the other side I had done the droplets. And then I just printed my old document right onto that, and I've already cut it down to fit in my journal. So it just gives you that old document kind of feel to it. So I did the mulberry paper. I did print another one on the mulberry paper, and I wanted to kind of show you what I did on this one, because this is just kind of a printer tip. I use an Epson EcoTank printer, and I don't think it matters that it's that printer. I think this happens with any printer, and I did not learn this for a longest time. But when you print something and you get stripes, and I've kind of messed these up now, so you can't really see, I don't think, very much, but you kind of see how there's a pink and blue, and there was a stripy pattern in that. It's pretty subtle in this one, so I really didn't mind it at all. When you get stripes in your digitals and it looks like just a real bad print, I used to then think I need to clean my print heads, which takes a lot of ink. So I would clean them, and sometimes you really do need to clean them, but it was happening a lot, and I felt like I'm just wasting ink. I keep cleaning these print heads. So I looked online, to see if there was any tip about that. And what I found was that was happening when I was printing it on just the cheapest normal setting. When I want my prints to come out really well, I probably really do need to clean my print heads, but to fix it without having to do that, I would just print on a better setting, even just one notch up. If your printer has, maybe in the print settings, it'll have normal, fine, high quality, whatever the poor quality, whatever they have. If I do it on at least fine, I don't get those lines. So that's just a tip. On this one, I forgot to change my setting. On this one, I did change my setting, so you can see this one didn't come out with any weird lines. And this one, I don't know if you can see, but there are some different color stripes in here. To correct this one, because I didn't want to waste it, it's printer ink. It's not, the original old document. So I knew if I get this wet, it's going to spread all my ink around. So to get those water damaged look on it, I just did it from this side. I used my little Tim Holtz sprayer, you can just get some water and do it like this with your hands. You don't want too fine a mist or it just makes the whole thing wet. But on this type of sprayer, if you do it really slow, you get bigger droplets instead of a spray. So that's what I did. You can let them run if you want. So I let them kind of bleed out and then just use a paper towel to dry the rest of the water up. And then I just ironed it to finish drying it out. So this one has a few damp spots in it now again, but it'll dry. Okay, so I just hit it real quick with my iron again, and I dried that. So that's something you can do if you don't want to waste a print that you printed and it didn't come out as nice as you want. Just mess it up by getting it wet and letting the ink all run. And then it just kind of all bled together. I could do the whole thing like that if I didn't want to see any stripes, but like I said, in this one, they weren't too bad. Okay, so I did that. I printed out. I have a whole pile of Italian documents that I purchased from Roxy, Rachel Roxburgh at Roxy Creations. She sells these paper packs sometimes in her Etsy shop. I bought these probably over a year ago, and I just never had taken the time to do anything with them. So I spent hours and hours yesterday scanning all of this stuff. I ended up with about 42, I think, images. So I'll put together a kit in my Etsy shop so that if you want to print them out, because they're all different handwritings and some ledger and just beautiful old documents. But it's fun to be able to print them onto your different papers that you've aged and kind of give yourself some faux aged documents. So that's kind of one way to put them in your journals without using the originals. So the trick that I was so excited about for that with that paper was the tea bag paper. This is a stained piece, and you'll notice this one's a little darker because I printed on it. So if you've never printed on tissue paper or any thin paper like that, you can do that. You just have to be very careful. So normally, if you're going to take a tissue or something like that, a thin paper like this, and print, you take a piece of regular printer paper, and then you're going to cut it just smaller than your paper, your printer paper, so that you can tape that down. And so then it's kind of one with your paper, and it'll run through, and you just put it on your thin paper setting. When you choose the type of paper, you go into your advanced settings, and there's usually a thin paper setting, and you do that one because it puts the right amount of ink on it for you. Okay, so the happy accident thing with this one was when I tea stain my papers, whether I'm going to print them or not, I need to iron them to put them in my book. You have to iron them a lot if you're going to put them through your printer. Some of them crinkle up more than others, like this tracing paper. This is thicker. It's still thin paper, but it's not tissue paper. It'll stand up in your printer still. So as long as you iron it, even though it still has these kind of crinkly bits, it will go through your printer because you see how nice and flat it is. So you don't have to attach. This is tracing paper that's been tea stained. You don't have to attach that to any backing paper. But if you're going to do tissue paper, anything like this, flimsy, you have to attach it to another piece of paper. So when I tea stained this paper, I went to iron it, and I had it flipped over. There's a smooth side and the rough side, and I started to iron it from the rough side. Don't do that because it sticks to your iron. It's not sticky at all, but it's just, I don't know what's in it that makes it that rough side, but it becomes sticky. I don't mean tacky sticky, but it will iron right to this paper. So I flipped it over real quick so I didn't have it, any gunky stuff on my iron. And I use a June Taylor, it's cutting mat on one side and then it's padded on the other side. It's just a pressing mat for quilters. And I use that so that I don't mess up my ironing board cover with all this, paper stuff. So I usually use that. Also, here, I'll show it to you. You'll see how dirty it gets because I'm usually ironing, gel prints or any kind of thing that might have paint on it. But it's nice because the opposite side is hard. So my ironing board is kind of cushy. And so this, even though it does have a little bit of cushion, it's pretty sturdy. So you're able to really press your papers out nice and flat on this. And then I usually, while they're still warm, I will stack them, between books, and that way it'll, while they're cooling, they'll stay flat and they won't curl up at all. So somebody had asked that in a comment, and so I wanted to kind of explain that in more detail, how I get my pages so flat for my books. So back to this one, when I ironed it, it was still even kind of sticking to that fabric of my board. And so I thought, oh wow, I wonder if it will maintain that stickiness, which it's only there if it's warm. It's cool right now, so it's not, you wouldn't even know that this gets sticky. So I tried it and it worked. So it's not sticky anymore because I've done this one multiple times, but I think I'll add it to this one and show you. So this is a piece I've already removed. I can actually feel some adhesiveness left behind on this. So I'm gonna take this rough side down, and I can trim it after it's on there to my paper to go through my pinner, but I'm gonna iron that on and show you what I mean. Okay, so I just ironed that, and there are some crinkles in there, but as long as it's really stuck, which it is enough, that ironed down, and then I would take this and I would trim this off and be able to run this directly through my printer. Now, when I do that, I also use the rear paper feeder. I would not try to do this through the bottom feeder. I always do any kind of specialty papers or fabric or anything like that that I'm printing on. I do that through my rear feeder. So that was just an extra bonus about this tea bag paper that I had no idea. So I've printed, like I said, one of my documents onto that, which will be nice. It kind of ends up being like sewing paper, you know, sewing pattern paper. Okay, so I have a few of these things in the mulberry, the rice paper, or that. I also tried rice paper, and here's what happened. So this was my piece of rice paper that I tried to dip and then transfer to my, I was drying them on an opened up garbage bag. It just fell apart. I couldn't even transfer it. So for this, I think I could still do that. I think I could still tea stain it, but what I need to do is I need to lay it where I'm going to let it dry and just use my spray bottle full of tea or coffee and spray it wet. And that way I don't have to touch it. And then that way, once it's dry, it's okay. It's just you cannot, it just disintegrated in my hands when I tried to pull it out. So if you're going to do rice paper, keep that in mind. Okay, so the other thing that I did yesterday is I had, for my journal, I had done a couple of, wanted to use some of these little tiny receipts. But they were too small to fold in half. I mean, it would have been kind of pointless in there. So I thought, well, I still like them. So I used my idea that I had done on, what did I do with those pages? For these, I had used my tea bag, from my actual little recycled tea bags. I was using that on the insides because I liked how it looked. So I went ahead, before I forgot this idea, I went ahead and did the rest of the pages that I had already taken out of the book. So those are ready to go now. So it's a good idea to kind of do these kind of things a few ahead of time, because sometimes I'll forget what the idea was. So on this one, I used the tea bag on one side, and then I found that I had some map washi tape that I used. This was a couple of single pages of a map that I created a folio with. So I've done that. I liked the fabric idea, doing the fabric idea. So I did that on another one. And you don't always have to have two of the same thing to create your folio. These were similar enough size that I went ahead and did that. And I did the tea bag. Actually, this on the inside is the scrap from when I did this, printed this. I had to trim some off. So I used just the natural tea bag and just did that. And I like that too, because you can kind of see through it, but it's there. So I guess my point is, I finally used those numbers that I have seen in fabric on the outside, is to sit, you know, when you're just watching TV or something, and make up a bunch of little things so that you don't forget your ideas. So I have these two that I can add to this journal, and then the doilies. I did a bunch of doilies, so I might want to use, I've already cut one of these, so maybe I'll grab another smaller one just in case. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my journal and just start going through and seeing where I might want to add something if I don't have like the pages next to each other the way they are. So I'm going to just start at the beginning. I have blank, that's good. Dictionary page with a pocket, that's good. Another blank, that's good. This is just a page. So I can add a pocket to this. It could be a corner pocket. I can add something to the edge of this because it is kind of thin. It's okay here. I could reinforce it more if I'm worried about it, but I'm not too worried about it. This, I have a little flip thing here, or a little tuck here. That's okay. Blank space again, that's good. This is all considered blank space and a pocket. This is another, just a piece I can add a flip something to, or add a pocket onto that, collage on it. This, I can add a pocket to the front if I want. Then I have this. It can be a flip with some more blank page if I want. That could maybe be nice. Let's see. That kind of looks nice as just a little decorative thing. I'll just leave that tuck there for now. That. Another blank, that's good. Another, can add on another blank, that's good. Another doily that's there. I like the color through there. And this is about wedding, so that's kind of nice. I could put something plain in here somewhere. Maybe here. Kind of like that. I think I'll just leave that. Okay, that one's good. Then here, I had toyed at one time putting this one. Let me see if I swap those. Oops. I do kind of like that, because I could put a pocket on top. I could make this like a corner pocket. Let's see how this looks. So there I have blank again. How did I end up here? Let's see. Where's my center? I didn't go through the whole thing. There. Let's see. Here, here, here. Okay. And then it would be this one. That's good, that's blank. Dictionary. Yeah, I kind of like that. And then I had put this here. thinking I could do something on this side with it. Or as a card that sticks in here. This might be a good spot for, since that's kind of like pattern paper. I'm going to cut this to fit here, I think. I think I'll put this down low. And I think I like this side because if I want to glue these down to make this kind of a pocket, because this is kind of a thinner page, I like this side better. So I think I'll do that. Okay, I did this yesterday too off camera. I had this I wanted to use in some way, and I liked it here, that I glued it to that flap, but then I'm going to make it an envelope, I think. So you can put some ephemera or different things inside this. So I think I'm going to try using, I glued the edge down here, folded it over just to make it a little more sturdy. I'm thinking of using just double stick tape here and here and seeing how that works. So that way it doesn't get too wet and wrinkly, because this kind of paper can do that. So we're gonna see if double stick tape works. That way it doesn't get all wet and wrinkly. And that worked nice. Okay, and then I could put a little closure on here if I want. I don't think I'm going to. It's pretty thin, so I think I'm just going to leave it like that for now. I could change my mind later. So it's just a little flip pocket. Okay, that's the second one. I think I'm good with that. I'm not loving that this sticks up so high though. It just keeps getting bent, so I think I might trim this one a little bit. Okay, and then our last one, I like those together enough, and I could do, you know, a pocket of some kind. It's too wide there. This is a flip that could be a pocket. blank like that, like that. This could end up being a pocket and that just tucks in there. I kind of want to use these too. Just to give myself something that looks a little more blank. I made that little corner pocket. Okay, I'm happy with those. So we can sew those into the book. Okay, so we've done this before. Let's see, I need my pad. I need to make my spine that's going to go here and put my fabric on it. So I actually don't need this yet. So I need to measure, I need to make my little sturdy piece. And what I have here is, I want to leave a gap. So I want to make this 1.5 inches, I think is good, by 6 1/4. Okay, 1.5 inches by 6 1/4. And then I want to attach, and it's not quite the right size. I need it taller, or I make my spine a little shorter, or I cover this. Let's see. My problem is I don't have any, I don't think any of these are taller. So I'll just tear off a piece, which I didn't do in the last one, so it's good for you to see what I mean anyway. So I'm just going to cover that end. So I just need a couple of 1.5 inch wide pieces. So let's just go. One for the top and one for the bottom. That way I won't see that. I'll have fabric there. So, like glue. Okay, and then my fabric. I'm using the wrong side of this fabric because I like the color of it better. It's more faded looking. And then this will go here. And I like it with this end paper is fine too. So that is going to be our floating spine, like so. So I'm going to sew my signatures to this. We've done this before, but we're going to do it again for those of you who did not watch the previous videos. So I need to find the center. I have 3 signatures, so I want to find the center and then split the difference on either side. So the ruler I like to use for that is the sewing ruler because it has good lines both directions. Okay, so 1.5 inches, so 3/4 of an inch is halfway. These have 1/4 inch increments, so that makes it easy. So I could do this from the front or from the back, but I'm going to do it from the back because we won't see that. And just make a line there, and then I'm going to make another line to split the difference. Okay, and then I need to make my lines this way. I like to do a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. The minimum you would want to do probably is 3. You could do 2, I suppose, but it's a small book, but I still think that 5 keeps everything sturdier. And since my pages are not all the same height, it's nice because you're going to capture them better with 5 holes than you would with 3. So I'm going to do that. So and I like to start, so I'm 6 1/4. So I'm going to go 3/8, maybe 1, 2, 3/8 in. I just want to make sure I capture short pages too. So maybe 1/4 inch. And since this is a smaller book, and 1/4 inch. And then the halfway mark would be 3 1/8. And then halfway between each of those. Okay, so this one is a little less than 1.5 inches. So here, there. Okay, those are my increments. So I'm going to go ahead and draw so that I get all across all 3 of these lines that I made. You don't have to be this exact. You can just eyeball them if you want. You're not going to see, nobody's going to be measuring them. I just kind of have a little issue, perfectionist issue. And even I don't do them perfect. Okay, so I've got my marks. And now I want to take now I need my pokey tool and my pad. And I'm going to make where those cross, that's where I want my holes, to punch my holes. If you don't, this is just a recycled pad out of a box, a folded up towel, old towel, something you don't mind poking holes in, some foam core if you have, just something so you don't poke through your table. It's good to get your holes a good size because you're going to be pulling a thread through there on a thick needle. So make your holes nice and easy. Okay, so I have my holes on this side, and I can kind of see them through this side because this is the side we're going to be working from. Okay, I think I'm going to go this way. You can put a T for top so that you always know what the top is, so that you get your signatures in the correct order, because even though I did these, when I poke them, they're not going to be perfect. Okay, so it's a good idea to know which way is the top so that you get them in the correct order. I can tell on this one because this is a straight edge and this is a frayed edge, so I know that that's to my right. So either put a mark or some way that you know. Okay, so my holes are good, and I need to make my holes for here and make sure that all of my pages are where I want them this way before I do this. I think I'll mark them on here and then lay them down and punch them. There's different ways to do this. I need to go get my tools. Okay, so I need to make sure I get my pages lined up where I want them in here. I can take that out. So let me just look through here real quick. Okay, once you have your papers where you want them, you want to clip them so they don't move around. Okay, and then line them up. Remembering that this is going to be floating with a little bit of distance, top and bottom. And I don't want these coming below my book, so I'm going to kind of do that to make sure. And I'm lining up to the first one here. And then I'm just going to take my pencil and I'm going to make a mark right on this spine. And hope that that's kind of in the middle of that. And again, these have so many pages in them that I really want to make sure I have this pushed through, because it's just going to be easier when I get my thread. Okay, so that's my first one ready to go in. So let me go get my thread. Okay. You can use any kind of thread that you want that is nice and sturdy. For signatures this big, I wouldn't use this upholstery thread's pretty thin. Use something thicker, some waxed thread, you know, beading thread, or embroidery floss or something like that. I'm using this is bookbinding thread from Lineco, and a blunt needle. So I've shown this before. If you don't have a blunt needle, you can make one. Just get a crewel needle, it has a big eye that your thread will fit through. And then you can just blunt the end with a file, or clip it off if you have some heavy duty clippers, and then, you know, file it so that it's blunt. This just helps you to not split your thread when you're binding, and that's important when you go to tighten things up. So I'm just going to use this waxed bookbinding thread. And you want to go a little bit more than double the length of your spine, because you need to tie a knot. So I'm just going to double that up. And then the hardest part for me is I tend to accidentally pull this thread through till I get it started. So you want to really kind of hang on to it. I'm going to start from the back side of this, and I'm going to start in the middle, because that's where my knot's going to be. I don't really want a knot here because it might stick, you know, you might see it, but I just like to start in the middle. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail that I can kind of hold on to, and this is where I tend to pull it through. Until we get it kind of tight after the first couple of holes, you kind of have to be careful. So I'm going to go through the middle. And this is where I don't want to pull that thread through. Okay, let me get in here a little closer. And then I'm going to go up to the next hole. You could go down, but this is just how I do it. Okay, how I want to end up is with a thread between each hole, inside and on the back side. So I'm going to go up to the top. Again, grab this so you don't pull it through, and then it'll start getting easier. Okay, I've gone through the top. And then I'm going to go back through the second one again. And that's where you don't want to accidentally split your thread. Because I wouldn't be able to pull that tight as easily. So I can even these up, pull this, because I know I need to do a knot, and kind of tighten those up. And then I'm going to go back through the center again, trying not to split my thread. And then I'm going to go down the opposite way. So I'm going down, back up through the bottom hole. Back in, not splitting my thread. Now you can see I have thread between every hole. And then on the back side, I have them, and then this is where I'll tie them. So I'm gonna put this needle through here. Makes it easier to kind of get some kind of grip on this. Just make sure everything's pretty tight, and then tie some knots here. Oops. 3 for good measure. Okay, and then I can trim some of this off, and I'll tape these down at the end. Okay, so that's 1 down. Two to go. Okay, for the next one here, I need to do the same thing. I need to make sure I have the pages where I want them. And if you ask me where I got these, I had them forever. I don't know. You could probably go on Amazon and find them. I probably got them at an office supply place. Okay, so there. And then I need to make my marks. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball. Okay, so now I have my signature sewn to my spine, and I'm gonna just make sure these are tight and then tape them down with some, this is just some medical tape. Okay, now I'm ready to glue this into my book. Okay, so you're going to, let me move out here a little bit. I'm going to use some PVA glue. I have this pH neutral adhesive, and it's for bookbinding, but you can use any kind of PVA glue. Kind of just let this nestle, leaving a little bit of a gap on both sides, and that looks pretty good. And then I'll just kind of make a little mark behind there so I can kind of see where I want my glue to go. So I'm just going to put, oops, it's probably more than I need. And use a silicone spreader. You can use your finger or something. And I'm just going to get the glue on this edge really well. And then I'm just going to use a credit card, or you can use a bone folder if you have a bone folder, and just get into that crease really well and let that, we want that to dry. So you want to put something heavy on that while it dries. So I like to, when I do these, I like to actually do one side and then the other side. You want to put some kind of plastic or something here so that it doesn't stick to your paper. And then put a heavy book or something on it so that it doesn't move around while you work on the other side. So I might let this dry for a few minutes before I glue down the front. Okay, so I've set a lead weight that I happen to have on top of a heavy book, and I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes. Okay, so, oops. This has been drying for a little bit. It needs to dry longer, but at least I can work on this side. So I'm just going to flip this around and do this other side. So I'm kind of pushing this down so that I really know that it's flat. And I still have my gap there. I should make a little mark. Okay, and same thing, I'm just gonna keep this edge down and put some a heavy book on it again. I'm gonna put this down so that it doesn't stick. let that sit and dry, and then I'll be back. Okay, let's take this apart and see if I've glued my plastic to my still a little damp, so I need to do this longer, but I need to end this video. So that looks pretty good. And you see we have a floating spine now. And a big gator mouth journal. So I want to let this dry. I still need to do a closure because this is definitely going to need a closure, and work on my spine cover. So without trying not to mess this up too much here, it's looking pretty good. Maybe I should wait until tomorrow to do a flip through. So I think I'll do that. I want to let this dry. So I'm going to actually put some weight on both sides with some books again and let that dry better. But you can see, you know, we have our nice floating spine, and I think having that spine cover will actually help sturdy all this up a little bit. But we're moving right along. So that's it for today. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.